does usually keeps time, which is Jen, right? Or
I can, but if we're gonna just answer the questions, shall we
that's true.
just cap our meeting off at 30-35 minutes? Will that be
That's true.
sufficient?
We won't
Okay.
need to do a keep time thing. You're right. Yeah. Okay.
All right,
Uh,
so we are live, so we can go ahead and say our names and then begin. So I'm Keisha Wilson.
Jen Newton.
Kristen Wright.
I'm Kennedy Clement.
All right, Jen, are you leading or am I?
Okay, sure, I can lead.
Okay, go for it.
So the first question is, how do we achieve fairness for all? So I'll start by just saying that, each week I feel really kind of heavy-hearted about the material that we cover because I feel so deeply for the LGBT community. Just meaning that I don't want anybody to feel like the underdog, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word actually, but how do we achieve fairness for all? The LGBT community doesn't feel like they're being treated fairly. The religious sector of our country doesn't feel that our constitutional rights are being honored. And so I think this is a really huge question that I don't know if there's one right answer for it. How can we achieve fairness for all when both parties feel that their freedoms are being infringed on? So, what do you guys think?
I think, at least for me, I had a hard time answering this one, and the only thing I could think of is just that we need to stop allowing things to be defined by the government, and allowing the government to solve all of our problems. Because for example, them defining what marriage is, I mean, it hurts one party or the other. And I refer to it as party, but it's not. Because if they define marriage in a way that supports religious beliefs, it's sad for those who don't go by that standard. And then if it defines marriage as a very loose thing, then it doesn't support, I guess, corporations that don't support a broad thing. And so my opinion is that the government should stay out of it. But that's just my opinion.
I think that that's a great way to do it. And it is a hard question to ask small government, but the thing that came to my mind, and I don't know if I'm thinking along a different lines, but is free market. Like, just let it be a free market. America works, right? And if you don't try and change things, then I think it kind of works itself out. I mean, let people, I mean, obviously not discriminate, but serve who they'll serve. There's always going to be another flower shop or another cake shop. And I just think free market is the way to create fairness.
That's a great idea, Kristen. I guess I just feel like all of the examples that we read in Truth Overruled, like that was devastating. And so how is there going to be like an equilibrium? And how are people not going to be attacked and pretty much bankrupt or having to close shop because they're being charged with discrimination? I mean, I totally understand on one side, you shouldn't have to take, I mean, when you're an independent consultant, you don't have to take on every job that you're offered. So I don't understand why this has gotten so blown out of proportion. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, there's plenty of examples. I've been a hairstylist since 19, and I don't take every client that wants to schedule an appointment. I've just said, sorry, I'm full. I mean, I don't even have to say whatever my reasons are, but I even commented on somebody's post in our discussion board saying, in restaurants, in like little casual restaurants, you've seen signs that say, no shirt, no shoes, no service. Well, is that discrimination? I mean, how far are we going to go with pointing everything in the direction of it being racist or discrimination or discrimination.
That's kind of what I thought. I was like, man, if we're gonna go as far as like tearing people's lives apart because they refuse to serve somebody that's against their beliefs, like how far is it gonna go? Like eventually are we all gonna have to like watch literally the words we say to each other because oh my gosh, that's discriminatory. Like I think that was crazy, the extent that people were willing to go just to prove a point. Like especially like the flower shop, for example, like those men still went through and did their like ceremony and had their wedding and everything, and it was fine. Like it didn't say that they had this devastating wedding because they didn't have the right flowers. Like it's not that big a deal. Like I just think it's crazy the extent that people are willing to go to prove their point, and it's just so sad that they're willing to tear apart other people's lives for it.
Something that was kind of I don't remember what it was called. It was the newsmen all talking over each other. And something that stuck out to me was if you have a business that's open to the public, you have to serve the public. And so, because I had the idea of like, for example, the hairstylist thing, you can decide who you style their hair or not. But if you're a public business, like you serve the public. And so I thought that was a very good point. But I also think if we go back to what the florist was saying, she sold him flowers for anniversaries, for other things, for like dinner events or things that him and his boyfriend wanted to do. And so she was serving the public and she wasn't denying him or being discriminatory at all. But when it came to the marriage, like I can't use my God-given talents on something that God doesn't approve of. But I also see the point of you're the provider of flowers, not, I don't know. It's really hard.
I see that too. No, I get it. But I also liked how that one specific lady, she ended up writing the letter saying, or, she wasn't, they were offering her a settlement. And she's like, no, I'm not going to sell out on what I feel. And she's entitled to feel that way. So this is why there's so much gray. But you're right. I mean, what's the big deal? And I actually, my thoughts are all over the place, but I was thinking, like I've told you guys before, that one of my very best friends is a gay man, and he's wonderful and I totally love him, but I do not have the same feelings about marriage as he actually doesn't even condone same-sex marriage. But nevertheless, if he did and I had to like flat out, I mean, he already knows where I stand. He was LDS previously, so it doesn't really have to be brought up for discussion, but it's fine. I feel like so many people from the examples in our chapter, like it's okay that we're all different and we can live in a world where we have a difference of opinion and still be respectful. I think what it really comes down to, especially for what we're talking about, is the definition of marriage. So,
I think the biggest problem is that they were sought out. It was like a witch hunt. It wasn't, I went into this business, I specifically wanted the flowers that you do because you do them different than everybody else. It was a witch hunt. And that's, I think, what bothers me the most, and why I think that free market, people can deny serving someone for a good, legitimate reason, obviously. I think that that's the way to do it, to be able to say, go somewhere else,
Going off of what Kennedy said, so that religious freedom class that I took, we did case studies. So we were assigned to groups, and then each group was assigned a law case about religious freedom. And I don't know how, I mean, the class was really big because it was just like a foundations class, but I don't know how many cases we went through, but I think there was one where the person that like was arguing for their religion won the case. And all of them were cases like cakes or flowers or whatever to same-sex couples, or one was like a Muslim some sort of Muslim ceremony. I don't know, but it was basically all businesses and people. And one of the students asked the professor, and I don't know why I remember this so well, but asked him, and he was like a religious lawyer for a really long time, and asked him what he felt is the right thing. And he basically said, if you're open to the public, you're open to the public. Really? And you have to serve everyone. Yeah. And that was his like straight opinion. And he's like, it doesn't matter who they are, what they are, but every time the court says, if you're open to the public, you're open to the public and you have to serve them. So,
well, and that's why, like, because I was thinking, like, how could this affect BYU and BYU Idaho and stuff? But we're a private university. You know, it still is going to affect us and can affect us. President Oaks has talked a lot about that. But that's the thing is, to me, I think, for example, the florist, again, she did a great job at providing flowers when it had nothing to do with the marriage. However, if she wants to stand by her beliefs, in my opinion, she shouldn't be open to the public if she wants to pick her public that she serves. But then again, I do think it was a witch hunt and that he could have just dropped it, and like that was just mean.
Can you like specify, I'm a business that does Mormon weddings. I'm a business that does bar mitzvahs. Like, you know,
if you're a private business, yeah.
I don't know, but it's
I would think you could just like Sports Clips. Most people know that Sports Clips is a men's haircut place. Like, obviously, if a woman went in there, they'd probably cut her hair too. But you know what I mean? Like, they have a specialty,
specific.
or like this law firm deals with claims court, or this law firm deals with accidents, or you know what I mean?
Right.
Or divorce, or whatever.
I think you would have issues though with like funding or like your property, just because I don't know much about that at all. But he was elder then. Elder Oaks gave a devotional at BYU talking about freedom of religion and kind of opened my eyes to why it's so serious and how it will start affecting us. And he mentioned things like that I just would never have thought of because I don't have much knowledge in that area. So, but if you want to learn more about that, watch that devotional. It's incredible.
Thing that scared me, and this is going off onto another question. I got to be better about my notes. I'm just getting into our conversation, but the thing that when they asked one of the questions was, what do you think is most affected, or what is the biggest problem? And it listed, you know, universities, and I don't know what else it listed, but I felt like universities was the biggest problem, because you can't take an entire university and say you're not going to receive federal funding for your students. It would devastate them. They would not have students, you know?
Mm-hmm.
They talked about even
Definitely.
just private schools, like parents putting their children in private education because they don't want to deal with what the public and traditional systems teach. The other example from our reading that really bothered me deeply was that couple that owned the barn and for 25 years hosted weddings on their bottom floor. You know do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And they felt like they were forced to close down because they didn't accommodate the same-sex wedding at their property. That just seems, anyway. Okay, I feel like unless anybody wants to say anything else for this first question, we can move on. Okay. The next one is, how do we address third-party lawsuits or third-part lawsuits? How do we address third-part lawsuits?
I just put that the laws need to be clearer and more defined, because otherwise bias can get in there. That's all I know.
So does that mean like the ACLU comes in and sues when it's actually the gay couple and the rose or the flower person? Is that what that means?
No. So, well, that's an example of it. But basically what a third part lawsuit means is, so if, I'm trying to think of a way to explain it. Basically, the person that's suing isn't involved in the original case. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like if I want to be like if I was now lesbian, I wanted to get married, I took my thing to the Supreme Court. That's between me and the Supreme Court. If somebody else comes in and sues based on that ruling, that's a third part lawsuit.
Okay.
Okay, I also understood it, and maybe I'm wrong with this, but originally, like Rob and the lady with the flowers, he could have sued her, but then the state stepped in and sued her for discrimination.
Yeah, that's also another way. So there's 3 parties involved.
So I'm just curious, and I don't know if I didn't read it right, but I felt like it was the state coming after her. And I kept wondering the whole time, is she still friends with this guy? Like, is he going, sorry that the state did this? Like, I know that did you get the impression? Because they were friends. I wonder about their relationship after it all. How stupid am I? But that's what I.
No, I thought the same thing. I was looking for it in the book.
That's a really good question, because I have this idea in my head that it's an example of a couple wanting everyone to accept them, but not allowing acceptance of religion.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, it could have, maybe it's not, but it says maybe it is the state, maybe it is the government or social media that's being the ones.
In the case of the flowers, the state attorney general, so the guy that says this is law or interprets the law, sued her for violation of the state's sexual orientation law. So in that case, it was the state suing her, not her friend, not her gay friend that was suing her.
But I just kept wondering about their relationship, Whereas he like, we're still friends. Sorry they're doing this to you. I don't know.
I always wondered that. I kind of thought about that too, but I also wondered, how did the attorney general even find out about the whole situation?
It was social media, I think.
Was it?
I think they said that he made a remark, or a friend did, that he talked to, and then it went like crazy. Uh-huh.
That's what I always think. I'm like, man, how do these random attorneys like find out about these little tiny disputes, like, and how do they become these huge lawsuits? But obviously social media would make it viral in a matter of minutes. So
can a way that you handle third part lawsuits be that you don't allow them? Like, can it just be between, like, why can't it be between the people that it's between? Why can that even be an option?
I think maybe the like the LGBT community gets the courts involved, and then, cites allegations against the Human Rights Commission ruling or something like that, just for more attention. Like, they're trying to steamroll their points forward. So
my answer
I just
to that is don't allow them.
Well, I think they were established for other things. So like higher criminal activity. So for example, I had a friend in high school, made some bad decisions, decided to drink and drive. She got in a car accident, killed a man that was in the thing. His family decided not to persecute because they felt like that she was already feeling enough guilt that she was going to be punished because he ended up dying, like all of this stuff. So the family said, no, we're not going to sue. But the state said, hang on a second, she was drunk driving and that's illegal, we're going to sue her. And so I think they originally started to create a way to regulate higher criminal activity, and they've gone down to these now conscious debates.
Yeah. That's interesting that you say that, because, let's see, about 4 years ago, my cousin and his family were leaving on a family trip, and they were in a horrible accident, and my cousin's wife died from the accident. And it was a devastating loss for everybody, of course. And the state, a representative came to his door once he was out of the hospital and just said, I'm so sorry for your loss, but I want you to know that the state may press manslaughter charges against you. So be prepared for that. So if you can even imagine, I just see them stepping in, like, that is a devastating accident. And I know we're talking about something different, but It's just another example of how the state steps in, and why would they for that? It just doesn't make sense.
And it's just trying to push an agenda. I mean, the agenda with the drinking and driving, it's to get people to not do that and them to see that, like, there is a consequence. But then sometimes I feel like it's not so clearly defined in the law, and it's based off of feelings and beliefs, and you can't prosecute that. I don't know.
And I feel like it goes back to, Kennedy, your original statement of, you know what, we just need smaller government. Like, why does the government feel like they need to step in and do these lawsuits? If people who are involved are done with it, let them be done with it. I don't know.
I agree. It needs to be more specific. Like, third-part lawsuits are allowable when death happens or when this happens, and it needs to be very specific, and then the laws governing what marriage means need to be very specific, and I agree.
Mm-hmm. But they can't because they have to please everybody. So then just step out of the picture. But
it makes you not want to ever leave your house, doesn't it?
Kind of.
I worry about my future kids.
Yeah, that's me too.
It's going to be really challenging in the future. So the next question, let's go ahead and move on. What is the legal precedent for these lawsuits? I feel like I feel like we've covered that already. Anybody else want to add more than discrimination? We're good? Okay, I'll move on to the next one. What threats should the LDS Church be concerned about? Adoption, religious schools, etc. I feel like we also covered that a little bit. Kennedy, did you bring up like BYU and?
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead.
I think for that one, just if you want to learn, watch that devotional.
What was the devotional called?
You know, I don't know, and I will look that up. It was given, I want to say last fall, like not this most recent fall, but last.
So the fall of 2016.
16, and it was Elder Oaks then, and it was on religious freedom or something.
If you go to BYU Idaho speeches and then search fall 2016 Elder Oaks.
It's just BYU Provo.
Okay.
Oh yeah, BYU speeches.edu.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
It's really good though, because he doesn't leave you questioning anything. He just kind of gives you reality.
Yeah, he's good at being direct and assertive. The other thing in this same question was adoption, and they talked about that a little bit in our chapter as well, just about how like the Catholic Church had a fostering and adoption program that placed, I think, 720 children in 1 year with families, traditional families, and now a lot of religious entities have stepped out of that because of their belief in traditional marriage.
We stepped out of that.
Yeah,
I know, but I don't know that that's the reason why.
I think it happened a long time before all these laws. They ended a long time, but then again, the proclamation to the world was created a long time before.
Right. We adopted my youngest daughter, and we couldn't do it through LDS Social Services because at that time they would only adopt to people who couldn't have biological children, and we have biological children. So we went through a private agency, but then after that they shut down. But I got the impression that it wasn't because of all this, but like you said, we didn't know about this, but it was just because of money. Basically, it was costing them
so
too
expensive. I actually think that the church, the biggest underlying thing, obviously, like the whole lesson was about religious freedom, but I think that's where we need to target things. I really, really, really loved the video of I think he was from Harvard, the professor that was speaking like in the library, and just talked about if the United States would increase religion, then everyone else, like, we could decrease crime, we could decrease all of these things because people have this inner morale to do the right thing. And I just felt like that was so profound. And so I feel like increasing religious freedom and increasing religion, obviously in a very evil world, is difficult, but I think that it would solve so many problems.
I agree. What do you think's changed though, everyone? I mean, do you feel like people are not as religious anymore? Do people not go to church? Or
From what I've learned in other classes, I'm trying to remember, maybe, I don't know, but the whole world is less religious, but I think America's more religious than other countries, but the whole world's just kind of going away from a religion. Yeah.
I don't know.
I was actually looking up for my internship some stuff about marriage and religion and how they like coincide, and whether or not like when two people have the same religion, whether or not their marriage is better. And the numbers show that there are less like churches and less different affiliations that are being formed, which kind of makes sense. Like eventually you run out of things to worship, like in your run, you know what I mean? Like, but that there was actually an increase in the younger generations going to church and a decrease in like the middle age. So like from like the 20 to 28, that number had gone up, but from like the 30 to 50 range, that number had gone down, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, I think it's in my sociology of the family class I'm taking right now. In the book, I'm looking at it. It's called The Marriage Go Round. And I think in that book, they talk about how basically religious attendance, like, you know, actually showing up every Sunday. People say they belong to whatever church, but that it's gone down quite a bit. But America is still higher than other places, but obviously not high enough, right?
I think it has a lot to do with a lot of different things. One being just us staying busy. We're now a very busy, immediate gratification culture, and sitting in church doesn't provide that for people. So, but it did scare me when it talked about how we won't have enough police if we don't have religion.
Right.
Yeah. That was a great video for sure. Shall we move on to the next question, or anybody else want to add anything to that?
I have to go.
Okay.
No worries.
But, sorry.
Have a good day. We just have.
Thank you guys.
Good night. We have maybe just like 7 more minutes, and then we're done with time.
Cool.
Do you want
to? And we did start like 10 minutes late for Kennedy's sake on this video if the professor watches it, so she's good.
Okay, so maybe we'll just do a couple more questions and we'll probably be finished with time.
Mm-hmm.
The next one is, how can the justice system be so biased? And I can add that, you know, I think that it kind of reflects off of the climate of the community. So now that LGBT has been having such a, I don't think they've had a powerful influence, but they've been throwing a tantrum. And so I feel like the politicians are stepping in to back them and, you know, judge as far as like the judges that are seeing cases. I feel like, that, I don't know, I've seen like just people have become so much more liberal and accepting of changes. So I mean, it's not supposed to be that way, but it just seems like once, I mean, I don't even know what to say about this, because I know that it's such a small percentage of people that are pushing for same-sex marriages. But yet they've gotten enough people throughout the world, or actually throughout our country and through our communities, to support them.
So something interesting that and this will tie back, I promise. But in my the I can't remember the name of the class. I took it last semester, but it's the one that it goes through like all of the mesosystems. of the family and how like all the different things affect the family. Anyway,
I think I took that last semester too.
Oh, maybe we're in the same class. But they talk about media and how that affects the kids and how that affects the family. And I think it was in probably like a book that we were reading or something. But it talked about how Hollywood often reflects the like values and stuff of the community or of those that were watching it. And I thought that was interesting. And I remember when I was like little and like the TV shows that my parents would watch, I remember the first time seeing like a lesbian couple on TV. I was like, oh, that's gross. Like, why are they, you know, I was little and I didn't understand. But now that's a very, very normal thing. You turn on television and there's a gay or lesbian couple on every show. Like, and it's just become something that's so normal for a lot of people in our community. And I realize that the majority of people in the States don't want same-sex marriage, but I think a lot of people in the States think that people should be able to love whoever they want. And so this idea of homosexuality has become fairly normal in the society that we live in. And so I think that because there's so much push politically to accept these people, judges and those people that are in positions where the public votes them in says, I can't have a bad public view. And so now I have to agree with these people, even if it goes against my beliefs.
Right. And I think that also it's showing that we don't trust the judicial system, because, you know, a lot of that chapter was like, just give them their day in court. You're not even giving them their day in court. And I think that it's hard to trust it because, like you said, they are kind of biased, but they also define the judicial system defines discrimination and freedom as the same thing, and they're not. And that's like, it's how do you win with that? You're not arguing the same thing, you know?
I think that's one of the biggest problems in 99% of arguments is that typically one side has one definition of one thing and one side has another definition of one thing, and they're trying to get them to match, but they're arguing about two completely different subjects, and so it never works.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, we are actually at our time. I just wanted to know, up in the corner of my screen, it shows that we're off air. Is it recording?
That's
Mine
weird.
says live.
Mine says live too.
Oh, okay. Well, that's weird. Kristen, do you want to recap or?
Yes, I will recap the best I can with my really awful typing. So at first we talked about Jen talked about how heavy-hearted she feels each week, and I agree with all of this information and this topic. And I think it was Kennedy talked about how she knows that each of the different groups don't feel like life is fair or laws are fair, and I mentioned that a free market is the way to take care of all this unfairness. Kennedy said that government doesn't define or solve, and so in other words, we need smaller government. And then we talked about that we're trying to tear each other apart and destroy each other, and that is sad and maybe the root of a lot of the problem. We talked about consequences of the lawsuits and who, actually that's down a little further. I'm going to wait on that one. Then we talked about how to address third-party lawsuits. We talked about what it means to make, or Keisha explained what it was, and she made it clear for us because I didn't quite understand it. And my answer to this problem was don't allow it, which is kind of silly, but we went back to Kennedy's original statement, which is have smaller government, and that's how we decided to fix the third-party lawsuits, maybe. Then we talked about what the legal precedents for lawsuits and what threat the LDS Church is concerned about. And we talked about schools, and we talked about that in previous conversations and how they will be affected by this, and Keisha pulled us back to the point of the lesson, which is religious liberty, and talked about the Harvard professor and how important religion is. And then Keisha talked about the mesosystems and how society is affected by media, and basically that's socialization. So we're all of society's learning to accept gay and lesbian relationships. And then we talked about how we are arguing in the judicial system about different topics, different definitions, and so there's no way to come to a conclusion. And that's the end.
Perfect.
All right, perfect.
Okay.
Thanks, you guys.
Next week. Yeah.
Hopefully more people will be back next week.
It's just kind of a hard one this week, I guess. Next week's not Easter, is it?
I don't know.
No.
Easter's on April 1st. That's also conference week.
Okay.
Cool.
But I have the end of this next week, we have 2 weeks of spring break for my children. I'll have 3 at home, and I'm not really sure what's going to be happening while they're here. So hopefully I will be able to join you. I'm planning on it.
Okay.
Do we know what week our last meeting is? I'm going to stop this broadcast.